Hey beautiful people, welcome back to the Ponder on That show with myself, Saffron King. We're here today with a very, very special person, Kelsey Clarke-Dixon, who is an educator and author who has recently released her book, See It, Speak It, Believe It, Achieve It. We're so glad to have you here, Kelsey. So Kelsey, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Excited to be here. I want to say thank you for even taking the time to sit down with me and speak to me and share my message and project that I'm sharing with, where it's other children and other parents. Like I said to you before, I love podcasts, so I've sat and watched your podcasts and you've interviewed so many inspirational people that are just doing their thing amongst the community and in their field. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. Honestly, you've achieved so much yourself, and honestly I feel like you're an inspiration to young people, to children, and I feel like more people need to hear your message and read your book as well. See it, speak it, believe it, achieve it. That's the motto for today, guys.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kelsey, what inspired you to become a teacher in the first place?
As cliche as it sounds, I think number one is making a difference. I think if you speak to any teacher, every teacher wants to make that difference in someone's life and in whether it's children's lives. But also for me, I know I had good role models around me, and I think it's important for everyone to have good role models. And if it's through parents or people in your family, or the second best thing is teachers, because you spend so much time at school. I think that's what drove me to want to teach and make that change somehow and be a positive role model. So I think that's where it probably stemmed from.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. I feel like your teachers really and truly, outside of your family or outside of your home, your teachers are your first role models. I remember when I was younger, I think I was about 5 or 6, I said to myself, I want to be a teacher like my teacher, because it was the only kind of thing I had before me to look at, to be my benchmark.
And I think everyone has at least one teacher that they say is their favourite or that they remember. And
Absolutely.
I know mine is a teacher I had in primary school, and that's probably why I veered more towards primary as opposed to secondary. But I do think having just a role model that you can look up to and that you can speak to is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And teachers have the power to really instill in children their dreams, the power to chase their dreams. Or sometimes, unfortunately, on the other hand, sometimes people have experiences where their teachers have kind of not being that positive role model, how should I say,
so especially for children that school isn't for everyone. Not everyone wants to sit down in a classroom and have to listen to an adult tell them X, Y and Z. And some people are more creative or some people are more sporty, and actually it's important, which is why I did an affirmations book, that actually you're mindful that not everyone learns in the same way. And it's important to try and cater to different children and know that no one person is the same. So where you're saying that some role models may not have been positive, I think as a teacher it's important to recognise that yes, no one's the same. Someone might display different behaviours, but it doesn't mean they're not, they haven't got their own dreams to follow, or they won't achieve.
Absolutely.
It might be that they achieve in a different field.
Absolutely.
And that's what I think words are important.
Absolutely. And going on the back of that, what is a common thing that you see lacking with our young children today?
Sometimes it can be belief, but the reason I say that is it can stem from what they hear. Sometimes it can be a lack of confidence. So if they're not given opportunities, they might not feel like they can achieve something. Or it might be that they don't have that willingness to even have a go. And that can stem from anything. It can be through not achieving at something and then not wanting to try again. It could be through just not having the opportunities. It can be through not having the best people around them to push them in that direction to try. So I do think self-esteem, I do think confidence. And also sometimes having positivity. Sometimes you can speak to children. I know I've experienced before where I've done an activity and asked children to say something positive about themselves, and they've struggled.
Wow.
And then when I've asked why, it's I don't hear much positivity, or they tend to spend a lot of time where it's playing games, so they're not having that feedback from an adult. So yeah, probably positivity, self-esteem to an extent, and confidence.
That's interesting. And you know what I thought came to me as well? I feel like as well, sometimes when like parents are going through so much, and like say for example when they're putting their kids in front, I'm not saying all parents do this because of this, but like for example if a parent's going through stress themselves or turmoil, they'll be surviving and bringing up the child on survival mode rather than literally raising them and pouring into them. And can you tell the difference between a child that's been brought up on survival mode to being poured into? Yeah, you can,
but also children pick up on so much. So if your energy is different or off, they can pick up on it. Wow. Even if it's something as small as being tired this morning, they can pick up on if you're annoyed, and that can then affect them in the sense of, if you know whether it's a teacher, for example, your teacher's not in the best of moods, you're going to be a bit more standoffish. But in terms of children being raised by parents that might be in survival mode, you see it in their behaviour. So it might be that, they're more defensive in situations, or it might be that they are more independent than they need to be because at home they have more responsibility. So it does show in different behaviours depending on the child and depending on their experience at home.
Absolutely. No, that's it's very humbling to hear as well, isn't it? And I mean, I'm around young children all the time, from my friends' children or family members who are young children. I don't have any children myself, but I never would think instantly that children actually do pick up on our emotions, because sometimes obviously you don't always know how to read it when a child can read you or see certain things that are changing. But like you said, children are more intelligent than
it's true.
Sometimes we give credit for.
Yeah, I think they're just, even if they're playing or something, they notice things, or when you think they're not paying any attention, sometimes they are, and they'll pick up on however it's you're treating them. So you might not realise if you are going through something, your behaviour towards them or how you're treating them might change on that day. And they will then notice that as well. They might not know why. As a child, you might not understand the reason why, but it's they're not normally like that, or they're being different with me, or you've never said that before. So
wow. And I remember speaking to someone who's very like clued up on the psychology part of things, and they said to me that, I don't know if you'd agree with this or have heard of this, but they said that in your first 5 years, that's when trauma is developed or something like that. Is that, would you say that's true?
And can stay with you. Because I do think the early years of life, it can have a massive impact on you in your adult years, especially if you don't deal with it, or if you don't look back to reflect on what's happened. And I suppose that's why in today's society, we're big on like whether it's mental health or going and seeking therapy, because it's important to unpack why you are the way you are, or why you might react to something that to one person might be normal, and someone else it's like, well, why are you like that? And it can be I'm not going to sit here and say, I know all the ins and outs of the psychology, but I do think childhood and what you experience can have an impact on later life.
Wow. And that's why your book is so important, because I mean, I know you said to me that it's across the board in terms of ages, but did you specifically have in mind a particular age when you were writing?
With the book, I wanted to help both boys and girls. So I didn't want it to be targeted at a certain gender. So then with age, I was looking at more, at what age do children start to, because children are innocent, so at what age do children start to maybe see themselves or start to compare themselves to others? When do things become more of a challenge? And I thought, well, it can depend on the individual. It can depend on their experience. So then I thought back to my children at work and at school, and what they go through and how things affect them. So after COVID, I noticed a difference in children's behaviour. So I focused it more on my age group. So I was teaching in year 5 at that time. So that's around the age of 9. So then I wanted it to range. I wanted it to cover a range of year groups. So that's why I made it as a very visual, bright colours, not too many words, but actually it's something that can be related to anybody, never giving up or persevering, just have a go, just do it. Wow. So in terms of age group, there wasn't a specific age group at the time, but I just knew my purpose and the reason for writing it was to promote positivity in children.
Beautiful. Honestly, well done, Kels. Well done. Why do you think having healthy self-esteem is so important for a child to have?
Well, self-esteem, I think without self-esteem, or if you don't have self-esteem within yourself, you will seek it elsewhere. You'll seek validation from other people. You'll seek validation from online and social media, which is what a lot of children do today. And there's no guarantee that what you're seeking is going to come back in a positive way. So I think it's important to build it up within yourself first, to have confidence in yourself before you try and seek from other people. Now, as a child, obviously you should get it from the adults around you. And I think with receiving love and support and guidance from adults around you, that will then build self-esteem. But if you don't have that, it can lead you down the wrong path. I also think having positive self-esteem and confidence, it gives you the reassurance that you can have a go at something, trying new things, or going and meeting new people and learning new skills, and knowing that actually, even if, it doesn't work out or you're not good at something the first time, you'll still have that confidence and self-esteem in yourselves to keep going. So without that, I think it can be the difference between someone following their dreams to an extent and not following their dreams, or keeping going and not continuing. So I think it can have a difference on your outcome overall.
And it's like what I was talking about the other day when we spoke on regarding like when your self-esteem has been broken, when the young person even going forward to leaving secondary school, college, or leaving college, going into the workplace, that stays with you. It doesn't just go, especially if you don't deal with it. And I feel like in the workplace, by then you've gone through so much breaking down that it's like in the workplace things inevitably go wrong anyway. But when you have that self-esteem, you got the tools to really persevere through. But when you've already started out not having the self-esteem, you've kind of already started off on a kind of like a one leg kind of thing, and still being expected to walk with two when so I agree with you. I think self-esteem is so important.
And I think that's why with, say, certain aspects of the book, I'm trying to, or the aim of it is to instill certain skills like resilience, where you said having to keep going from a young age, because I think some of those skills we as adults are still trying to perfect. So I think the earlier you start, the easier it becomes, as opposed to getting to the age of where it's 18 or when you leave university and having to battle with the real life world. And now, okay, I've come up against a challenge, what do I do?
Absolutely.
So for me, it's a case of what skills do I think adults are trying to figure out now still, and how can we kind of put that into a child-friendly conversation, a child-friendly manner, to then support children with building those skills.
Absolutely.
And it's not something that you're going to learn overnight. So it is a case, the earlier you start, the more you can build, and as they get older you can develop it.
Absolutely.
How you teach to an adult isn't going to be how you teach to a child. But it's just ingraining those and embedding those small steps to help them along the way,
and they'll be more ready when it comes to that time, rather than it all being exposed to them in one go. Absolutely. So, Kelsey, what inspired you to write this book, Speak It, Believe It, Achieve It?
A number of things. So, number one, I've always said teaching for me is like the first stepping stone, and I've always wanted to do more. I looked at it as, okay, in the space of an academic year, impacting, say, 30 children in my class in whether it's 9 months, 10 months, didn't seem like enough. So I tried to figure out a way of how can I still reach more children, a wider audience, without having to leave the classroom. So that's where writing became like the next best thing. So okay, I'm still in the classroom, I'm still teaching and hopefully having a positive impact on those children, but writing a book allows me to reach children, whether it's in Birmingham, in a different city, in a different country, in a positive way. But then with See It, Speak It, Believe It, specifically in the affirmations, it came from when I was teaching, I think I was in year 5 at the time, so around 4 years ago. It was after lockdown and COVID, and we had the first lockdown, and then we went back to school this September, and I had my new class for that academic year. And I remember I had a little girl in my class who I knew of her from the years before because she was so confident. And I remember her mum coming to speak to me and just saying that she was concerned that since COVID and lockdown, that she noted a change in her daughter, and she wasn't as confident and she wasn't as outgoing and bubbly. But obviously I didn't know her daughter that well. I'd literally just had my class. So it was a case of getting to know the children, getting to know her. And then she called me a second time to speak to me separately, because when she spoke to me in person, obviously her daughter was there. So she didn't want to say too much in front of her. And again, she expressed that, you know, she's so outgoing, like she's so bright, she's so this. And since lockdown, you know, the change of routine, change of the interactions with her friends, not seeing them as often, the lack of social interaction, she feels like there's been an impact. And then once we got back into the classroom in September, you notice the difference in the children. You notice that, you know, their ability to interact with one another wasn't the same, because they hadn't had that for however many months. So then it was a case of, okay, if this is one child it's happening to, is it happening to other children? And the answer was yes. Even speaking to other parents and adults, like they said they saw the same. Like you would see it online, you saw it on the news where teachers were saying and educators were saying that it's had such an impact, not on just us as adults, but on children. So again, it was like, okay, so is there anything that me personally I could do? So in my classroom I started sharing affirmations with the children, like positive words. I'd get them to go around and say something positive to the person next to them, which was a challenge. It was like, oh, like that's not my friend, what do I say? And it's like, okay, so what's a skill that they have, or what's something that you like about them, or what's something they're good at? And I tried to move away from, oh, I like their trainers. I'm like, okay, that's great, but what else? So we would do a task of going around saying something positive about one another, and then it was saying something positive about yourself, which again, it was a challenge at first, because like I said earlier, they hadn't always heard positive comments about themselves, or even as adults, we don't always say something positive about ourselves. We're quick to say it about someone else, or I like that you've done this, or oh, well done for this, but we don't always champion ourselves.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think they found that difficult. So I started and I said, right, I like this about me, or I'm good at this, or I think I can do this. And then that then spiraled, and then they could come up with their own for themselves. So then with writing the book, I was like, okay, affirmations work. It's had a positive impact. I saw the difference even just in one lesson, how they just seemed more upbeat and just like positive and just warm. And I was like, okay, so affirmations, I like affirmations. I have affirmation books. Maybe I could do one for children. So then I was researching, are there affirmation books out there? Yes, there are. How could I make mine different? Okay, let's include rhyming in there. Let's make it targeted for boys and girls, make the colours bright. I looked at, should I do it as dated affirmation? So the one I have, it's like January the 1st, January the 2nd. I was like, but if I do it as dates, will they read it once a day? Is that what I want? Or do I want them to read it like cover to cover? So I was like, if I do the alphabet, they can then choose as parents or as children or as educators, whether they focus on a letter a week or a letter a day, that they can try and build on that skill, or they could read it cover to cover as a bedtime story. So in terms of why did I write See It, Speak It, Believe It, Achieve It, it came from first the little girl in my class whose mom came to speak to me, then trying to implement things in my class to help the children that I had direct contact with, and then seeing how I could put that to a wider audience.
Wow, amazing. No, that's a beautiful, that's inspirational alone, that, you know, it was actually a young child who actually did inspire you to write this, you know, like from speaking to her mom, and that's beautiful to hear, Kels, honestly.
I mean, I wish she knew, but like at the time, I remember I had 2 boys in my class, and they would sometimes stay behind at break time to write a story, and I would say, like, you know, one day you could be an author. Like at this time, I just started writing, and I never said to them I was doing the same, but I'd always let them stay in at break time, like get their laptop out, write their story, and they're like, Miss, can you look at it and edit it? I was like, yeah, sure. Aww. And they would email it to me or send it to me or have it saved on their laptop, and I would go back and forth with them. And I was just like, without telling them what I was doing, it was just trying to encourage them as, okay, you can go out and be an author if you want. It might seem so far-fetched and, you know, you're just starting in the classroom, but this might be where your journey starts from.
Absolutely, yeah. Everyone has to start somewhere, you know. What has your response been like for your book so far?
It's been really positive. I mean, I'm quite a reserved person and quite private, a lot of people say. So when it came to writing, the only people that knew were my parents, my brother, and then one of my best friends. So it wasn't until I put it out on social media and it was completed that people knew.
Wow.
So I think it was obviously a surprise to a lot of people, like, oh, like when did you do it? When did you start writing that? And I was like, oh, I started 2 years ago. And they'll be like, oh, like, why didn't you say? Or I was just like, oh, I tend to just do things, and then when I feel like the time's right to share it, then I'll share it. But no, like, the support's been like unmatched. Like, you just don't expect it. Like, even on the day of the launch, I remember saying like, oh, I just expected my close family and a few friends to turn up, but the people that turned up, that just showed their support and were just, you know, showed how proud they were, and just that they agreed that actually, yeah, we do need to support the younger generation, and how can we support them, what can we do? But yeah, it's been been really positive.
And has a young person like read all of the book yet? Or
yeah.
And what kind of comments have they said to you?
Well, first, like, the images have said like they've liked how bright they were, or like the fact there's a boy and girl. Like, sometimes it's siblings that have read it, and that's where, for me, the imagery on the front was a case of thinking of me and my brother. Like, we have a really close relationship, so that's where the idea of that came from. But no, like, they've just said that they've been able to either speak to their parents about certain things. So one of them is voice for V, and it's been able to teach that actually, even as a child, you have a voice and you can speak up. Absolutely. And they've said that's allowed them to kind of not necessarily communicate with their parents, but it's allowed their parents to have conversations with them where they can address certain situations. But in my class, for example, one of my boys, like, one of my favourite moments is sharing the book with them, because they were just like, Miss, like, how did you do that? And how were you an author? Aww. And I remember one of them, I think I was just on the computer one of the days, and behind me I just heard someone going, see it, speak it, believe it, achieve it. And I was like, what are you doing? But it's been so positive, and the reaction is just, I just think surprised, if anything.
And, you know, I think it's so important that they've been able to see that kind of success so close, so they know it is attainable. You know, it's very important.
Yeah, representation for sure. Because even with things like World Book Day, in schools, we have authors come in and share their books with children and share their journey. But then after that, you don't see them again. So with having someone in such close reach, you can actually ask them questions, or it's more attainable to you, because this is just someone you see literally every day. That's either a teacher, or it's your cousin, or someone that you speak to, or a family friend that has gone out and done that. And when you think of an author, you think of the likes of J.K. Rowling and your big authors that you're not in reach of. Like, you can't just get up and tweet or call J.K. Rowling and get a response. So I do think representation is key, and knowing that someone that you're close to has done it, so you can do it as well. Like, there's no barrier for you to attain that goal.
Absolutely. And what comes to mind as well is that they see your journey firsthand. So no, it's beautiful. Absolutely. What was the most challenging part about writing this book?
Probably time was one, especially with obviously still working like your 9 to 5, or I don't call teaching a 9 to 5. But,
a lot of people think you get 6 weeks off.
Please, it's well deserved. But I think one was time, and allocating time aside to say, right, I'm dedicating it to writing. And when I first started, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to write. I just knew the purpose of it and what I wanted the outcome to be. So I had to get to a point of where I was like, regardless of how I feel or regardless of how tired I am, I need to write every day. And it doesn't mean I'm going to sit here for 2 hours and be on my laptop typing or be drafting. Sometimes it was 10 minutes where I was like, okay, this is all I've got for 10 minutes, or this is all I can produce for 10 minutes, but at least I've done something. Whereas other days I could be there for like an hour, 2 hours typing and drafting, to see that progress. So I do think one was time, but also another challenge was knowing how to like navigate through the journey of writing a book. It's something new, so it's not something I've done before, and there's not many people you can reach out to, or not many people that you might know that have done it as well. So there was a lot of either new skills or new aspects I was having to face, like an illustrator. How would you come across an illustrator? So I had to speak to someone that I know that has written a book and speak to her. Then it was, okay, how do you find the ISBN number? Or copyrighted, is it copyrighted in the UK? Yes, it is, but what about if I want to sell in America? So there was a lot of research that had to go on in the background before we could get to the end product. So that was the challenge in itself. And then you would tackle something, and then there'll be something else. It's like, okay, another setback. How am I going to do this? Is there anyone I can reach out to? If not, what does the internet say? But then it's like, how much of that can I rely on? So I think it's just with anything that's new, it's just trying to navigate your way through the journey with the resources that you have. And I think you can always find the answers one way or another, whether it's speaking to someone and reaching out and asking for help, or whether it's using the internet and looking at what other people have done.
Absolutely. And you persevered through it. Even I never would have thought, oh my gosh, you have to go through all of those different barriers, you know, but you did, you know. So it shows that there's so much work that happens behind the scenes, you know, and which has created this beautiful product, you know. Did you have to face some personal fears of your own when you were writing the content of this book?
I wouldn't necessarily say writing the content of it, because I believe that I had a lot of positivity growing up anyway. So for me, it was, how can other people have the same? Like, I always go on about how great my mum and dad are and how much of an impact they've had on how like me and my brother have turned out and how we've been raised. So I wouldn't say necessarily with the writing process, but I think, say with the book launch, for example, with that, I think I realised that I don't like things going wrong. So I did get to a point where I was like, actually, I'm not going to do a book launch. I'm just going to release it, because if I do a book launch, something could go wrong. And then my mum said to me, she was like, no, like, go through the process, still do the book launch, you know, promote it however you want to promote it, and design however you want to design, and arrange however you want it to be arranged. And that will then help with your outcome. And I was like, yeah, true, but no. I hear what you're saying, Mum, but no. So I think it was more of a case of accepting that something could go wrong, but also it might not. Like, it's a 50-50 chance. And even if it does go wrong, it's a learning curve. And I ended up enjoying the process anyway. And I loved the book launch on the day, and having working with people to put together the book launch. It was my cousin, because she's in events, she's into like events management and creativity, and my friend who likes presenting, so she did the presenting side of the launch. So it was a case of just overcoming that fear of, yes, something could go wrong, but that's okay. Absolutely. So I'll probably say that was one of the biggest challenges, but not so much in the writing process.
Okay. Well, you know, you overcame all of your, you know, what you thought would have. Oh, I didn't try.
You can only try.
Did anything go wrong as well?
I think when ordering the books, they sent out, so you go through like the author's copy and you proofreading. And when I sent out for the batch, they sent me just one copy back. And the book launch was in like a week and a half to go. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I haven't got the copies of the books. The book launch is in, I think, 2 weeks or so. If I don't get them, and they were saying it takes 10 days, I was like, oh, but they managed to obviously sort it out. And I was like, my book launch is literally in days. But yeah, but these things happen. You know, I think whenever you speak to anyone that tries to do something off their own back, or doing something like some sort of project, something always tends to go, nothing goes, and not everything goes to plan.
Absolutely.
You
and
just have to
you stepped out
through.
You know what I mean? When you step out, you're literally walking on air sometimes, so literally anything could, the wind could come, or honestly, you know,
you just have to ride the wave.
Just ride the wave. Exactly. I mean, and this leads to my question, and I mean, obviously I know you said you had a really positive upbringing, and your parents really, you know, instilled a lot of positivity in you. How did your inner child feel when you were reading back, or when you were writing what you were basically speak it, believe it, achieve it?
I think in terms of like my inner child, she would have just been proud, number one, knowing that everything leading up to this point, I believe, happens for a reason. Yes. So whether it's positive or negative, knowing that actually you can still achieve what you want to achieve. So I think number one would have been proud. Number two, excited to see where it leads. You know, excited to share it with other people, because it's not so much about me, it's about how I believe it can impact other people, or how it can help others. So whether that's other teachers and how they can use it in their classrooms, whether it's other parents and how they can use it with their children. But I just think quite humble as well, you know, to think of an idea, go through the process, and then see the final end product. You know, I'm sure we all have ideas, but don't always necessarily follow through. And I think like I'm guilty of that as well. But this was something I was like, no, I want to get this finished. You know, I want to make sure, yes, I've started it. Yes, I've had the thought process. Yes, I've gone through drafts, but actually I want to see the process through regardless of what knockbacks might be thrown at me. So
absolutely. Yeah. And you know, the thing about self-esteem as well is seeing something through, believing that it will happen, even when you don't see any concrete evidence that it will actually be successful. But it's knowing that you've got the tools inside of you that will make it successful, that you know that you will keep going regardless of what obstacles do come your way.
I suppose it's similar to having faith, I guess.
Yes, exactly.
Like not seeing the end goal or not having it there in front of you, but just believing that if you keep going, then it will happen.
Absolutely, you know? Kels, absolutely. What would you say to a young person right now who hasn't been able to read your book yet?
I would say that I would say for sure that this book is something that, you know, it's not there to it's a good question.
You can take your time.
It's a good question. I would say that, you know, it's there to guide you. So as much as we have adults there to guide, I believe reading's important. So I believe you can learn through reading, and it's not a chapter book that you have to read for hours on end. It's something you can pick up for 5 minutes or less and take something from it. There's a message on every page. So whether you're where it's to do with just smiling at someone and being kind and showing kindness, where it's to do with having faith is one of the pages, so believing in God, or whether it's to do with the importance of family and that actually everyone in your family loves you. They might show it in different ways because everyone's different. But I think there's a message on every page that anyone can take, whether it's a child or an adult. So, I would say, you know, any page you turn to, you haven't got to read it cover to cover. You can turn to whichever letter. I always say start with the letter of your name and see what's on there. So whenever I send a book out, I always put the bookmark on the page of the letter of that person's name. So I'll see.
And what made you, because you said that you put faith in there and like belief in God, what encouraged you to, why did you feel that was necessary for the book?
Because I think it's important to have faith and believe. So like we were just saying, that you don't have to see something to believe it. And that's why the book's called See It, Speak It, Believe It, Achieve It. If you don't see whatever it is, it's going to be hard to achieve. So you have to see it first, regardless of what anyone else thinks. Absolutely. Regardless of, you know, whether it's parents or friends or so on. It's down to what you see, and then speak by it. So whether it's sharing it with other people's, believe it, and then you will achieve it. So that's very similar to having faith. You know, if you're in the process of doing something or starting something new, you might not know what your end goal is, but have that faith, trust the process, and you know, see it through.
Oh, beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that, Kels. And do you think, this is going back to us adults now, or not even going back, but going to a bit of the adult life, do you think sometimes as adults we don't always believe in our dreams?
I think that, you know, as children you can dream as big as you want. Like the world your oyster, and then you get into your teenage and your adult years and it's like, oh no, there's a real world out there, and you know, you're told yes and no in certain situations, or you're told to be realistic, and you know, we can get caught up on, okay, is this realistic, is this going to work? Or it could be that actually we're adults now, we have bills to pay, we have to be responsible with our decisions. So in terms of, do I think we don't necessarily follow our dreams or we don't necessarily believe in them, I think we can get caught up in having to be realistic and having to be responsible. If you have children, can you go and quit your job tomorrow and fulfill this dream that you have? No, probably not. That's not responsible. But it's about putting the steps in place to work towards things. And I say to especially my class in particular, I speak about them all the time.
I love it.
I call them my kids. And people say, how many kids you have? Say 22.
Oh,
I'm like, I'm 22.
Yeah, 22. What girl? You look good for 22. Well, you had 22 kids.
But I say, like, how you see something being doesn't mean it will be that way, but it might be that your journey takes you on a different path, you know. And I remember one of them saying, oh, is that like if one door closes, another one opens? And I said, yes. Like, how you vision something, it might not turn out that way, but it might lead you down another path to get to your final destination. So in terms of adults and their dreams, I just think it's about putting steps in place. Not necessarily be responsible still, but don't give up on them. You know, yes, you know, you get to an age where you have responsibilities and you can't, or not everyone has the financial stability, or not everyone has the means to not have to work and then fulfill their dreams. But I just think it's important to still have it in the back of your mind and see how you can work on it. You know, there's so many people that work their 9 to 5 and then will do something else on the side. That's fine. Yeah, exactly. You know, it's just about still working towards it. Don't give up on it because you have this as well, or because you have responsibilities. I think it's important to find the time to try and work on both.
Absolutely.
I do think the younger you start, the easier, because you have less responsibility, but regardless of your age, it's doable.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do it, you literally. And the reason I asked you that is because I'm trying to make the link between when you're a child to adulthood, and how the self-esteem you did or didn't have as a child can lead into your adulthood if not checked. Yeah. So do you think that there is a link between adulthood and childhood and the way how we were nurtured through our self-esteem and courage?
I do think there's definitely a link between the two, but also I toy with the idea of you do have to get to an age where you take responsibility of your outcome.
I love that.
I don't think you can. It's a hard one because, you know, if you've been through something and if you've not dealt with it, then of course it's going to have an impact for sure. But I do think you have to get to an age to where you think, okay, why am I like this, or what did I go through, and how can I try and improve on that? So it's a hard one because, and I think it's a difficult one to say either or, is it this way or is it that way, because it can be quite sensitive. You know, if you can't speak on someone else's experiences, you can only speak from your own. And if I'm saying, you know, I think actually I've had quite a positive upbringing, who am I then to speak on someone else's? All I can do is try and spread positivity, or try and show how you can improve situations. But do I think upbringing or how your self-esteem was as a childhood or your experiences, does it impact your adulthood? Of course. I mean, you see it all the time. But I think it's just a case of trying to actively work on it, you know, and not be so passive about it, and address certain situations, or see what you might need to reflect on, or what you need to do, and go from there.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Kelsey. And it is important to work on ourselves and take accountability, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, because if we sometimes allow, like if we're passive with our trauma or what we've been through, it's easy to just allow time to go by, and then we just get buried underneath the things that we go through. But it's about taking that accountability, getting the right how, and really that you deserve to have to be victorious over it rather than a victim. Be victorious rather than the victim mindset. Because the victim mindset, it might feel good. When I say feel good, meaning it can allow people to stay in a comfort zone, a comfortable place, but actually that comfortable place isn't always healthy.
No,
so I completely agree. So is there anything else you would like to share, Kels, on that's been on your heart?
Just to, you know, be kind to others, you know, especially in today's day and age. I think everyone is very quick to compare, whether it's through social media. I mean, we have access to so much nowadays.
We do.
And you don't always know what's true out there. Like, you see something through a screen and you can put anything on social media, you know, and we're so quick to kind of take it in and assume that's someone's truth. And actually, I think it's just important to take things with a pinch of salt, be kind to people, and, you know, listen when someone's talking. They might be trying to share a message with you, or, you know, I just think be kind, spread positivity, also be understanding. There's so many things.
Yeah.
Probably another book.
Yeah, I know. actually leads to another question. Are you allowed to share? Are you working on anything else at the moment?
Well, when I first started writing, it wasn't this I was writing on originally.
Okay.
And I think through after lockdown with going through the little girl in my class, that's what led to the affirmations. So what I originally started writing on is already half completed.
Oh, amazing.
But I do want to focus more on this book first before trying to push a second
understand.
book. But yeah, there is a second book in the works.
Oh, so guys, you have to keep an
no,
eye.
No date, no.
Oh yeah, we'll just keep an eye. Yeah, a close eye.
Yeah.
And where can we find you on social media to keep a close eye on what you're doing?
So on Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok, it's Miss Bracket Ed, so ED, close bracket, and then Ucation, so UCATION. So it's missed education with the brackets between this E and the D.
And I'll put it obviously underneath this video as well, so that people can see visually. And what is the website where people can purchase your book?
Yeah, sure. So Kelsey Clarke-Dixon, so KelseyClarkDixon.com.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey. Thank you for coming on the show. You've given us so much gems to think about, both us adults and children. And I feel like one thing that I'll definitely take from this conversation is being sensitive to the generation behind me. So being mindful about what I speak to children, no matter how young or how old they are, because they all deserve to have a voice. And
for sure.
they, they're innocent, so they're very impressionable. So we have to be very mindful about how our actions do impact. And some people are like, oh, but it's their parents' jobs to do that. But actually it takes a village to raise a child. Do you know what I mean? Parents can't just do it alone. Parents are either two people or one person, or some children don't have none. So what happens then when that happens? They have to rely on their village, and I think it does take a community. So I definitely will to just be more mindful about how I speak before young people, and when they come to me with their dreams, to say absolutely you can do it, and don't let anyone stop you.
Because it's certainly long lasting as well.
Exactly, because I remember things that people have said to me years ago, whether it be positive or negative, even from a child. So I of course know that it can happen to another child, especially with the social media age of comparison of different things. There's so much more now than what we had when we were in school. So we had Pixel or MySpace, Bebo, and that was even we had to still go home to log on. Whereas now it's all on your phone. It's a constant thing. So I really like as well what you said about when you do have a healthy self-esteem, good self-esteem within you, you don't rely on outside validation. And I think that's very important, especially now in this time. So thank you, Kelsey. Thank you for listening, guys. So you can find us at Ponder on That Podcast on Instagram and YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and all audio. Ponder on That with Saffron King. So bye for now, and keep tuned on what Kelsey's doing. Keep a close eye, and don't forget, if you can see it, and speak it and believe it, you can achieve it. So definitely purchase the book when you can, for either yourself or if you're a parent or for a young child who So bye for now, guys. Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you.
Bye.